Obviously, the gentlemen on the call need very little introduction. Jaco, Peyper, and Nigel Owens, two very accomplished former referees. Some of Nigel's current work involves him working with the selection panel for the United Rugby Championship, and Jaco is working sort of with next generation referees in South Africa. Obviously, it's been announced that Jaco has a role to play within the Springboks national setup. So we will hold just a short number of questions about Jaco's new role to the very end of the call, just because we are here to speak about other things rather than Jaco's new role immediately. So I can already see people are putting the hands up. So if we could just ask everybody if you use the raise hand function, and I will try and get us through as many of the questions as we can. So anyway, the first question I see is William Davis. So I'll just allow Nigel and Jaco to pop on there, and then William, off you go. William Davis.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Adam. Yeah, good to be here. My first question, I'm going to talk to Jaco first, if that's okay. Referee, or you come from the Southern Hemisphere, is there still too much difference in the way that things are interpreted between the Southern Hemisphere and the Northern Hemisphere? Does that have to be kept talking about between referees and teams? Just I'm talking about breakdown areas and other things. It sometimes leads to a little bit of confusion.
Yeah, look, pretty good question. It's been relevant for a long time, but I think the way the referees prepare these days in different competitions, with South Africa participating in the Northern Hemisphere as well, all referees get together in a workshop at World Rugby level, and then everybody tries and achieve the same objectives. There's a key focus area, there's a best practice, and then that is taken into Six Nations, and from there on it moves into URC, a Heineken Cup, it goes back to Super Rugby. So if you want to get selected at the high end of the game, I think you can't go off script of what has been agreed by the referees are the best way forward. Obviously, URC or let's say Champions Cup will have little small nuances where they focus on, which may be competition trends. But I do firmly believe that the days are gone where we have a South and a North interpretation. There might be conditions that's a little bit different in Super Rugby. It might be conditions are a bit tougher sometimes during the winter up in the north. So I think the teams play towards the conditions, but the referees try and achieve exactly the same in all the competitions. And it filters down from the top down, because if the referees want to be picked at the high end of the elite end of the game, then you work towards the same goals as all the other referees in the different hemispheres.
Thank you, lovely. Nigel, if I can ask you, just about the situation with TMOs, which continues to be a big discussion point for fans and media, particularly in regard just to the way that sometimes some TMOs seem to take over decisions. They're asked to take them over. The referee on the field then becomes less involved. Does that have to be tidied up? Because it's becoming more of a discussion point sometimes than the actual games.
Next question. No, like that's a good question, William. Look, the game has changed. So you can't referee a professional game of rugby, particularly at the top end of the game today, without technology to help you make the decisions that are just humanly impossible for you to see. But after saying that, I think the more you use technology, the more discussions we are having, because then rugby is a game of a lot of grey. Rugby is not black and white in many areas, just like life is. And then once you bring it into technology, it then becomes very technical to the letter of the law, and then the feel of the referee his interpretation of it, then his hands get tied a bit. And this is something that I've been hanging the drum about for quite a few years, is we are talking about more controversies now with technology than we were before we had it the way that it is now. So from a personal point of view, I certainly think it is beneficial for the game to get those key decisions which you just can't see otherwise. But I also do think that if you use it too much, then it does take away from the game. And it also then, I think, subconsciously takes away from the referee, because my philosophy when I refereed was, I know that I'm not going to get everything on the field, but I'm going to do my damn best to get everything I can. And then what was just humanly possible for me or my assistant referees to see, then that's when you want the TMO to come in and sweep behind you. But if you go out there knowing that is there as a backup, that's when you make mistakes. So it's a little bit like, you know, put a tightrope across the two highest skyscrapers in the city. Now, if you're going to walk across that tightrope and there's no safety net underneath, you're going to make damn sure that you're going to be totally focused and get to the other side without making a mistake and falling off. Mistakes will happen once in every 100, but they'll be very, very far and few between. Now, put a safety net underneath it, and you're going to go walking across that knowing, doesn't matter if I fall, I'm going to be safe. So you're going to walk across, maybe not as focused as you would be, a little bit blasé, and then all of a sudden the mistake happens and you fall. And that's what I think technology has done. So from a personal point of view, it is needed in the game, because that's what we want, is to get the big decisions right. But I do think it needs to be reduced and not used in the way that it is at the moment, which is pretty much for nearly everything, and let it go back to the match referees, who are more than capable of making the decisions on the field themselves.
Nigel, thank you very much. Thanks, Adam. That's me out. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, William. We go to David Kelly. Sorry, David, now there's an issue with your video. We're trying to fix that for you.
Hi, guys. I hope all well. A question to each of you, if possibly just arising out of the, here I am, the Six Nations that has just concluded. We had a couple of incidents involving on-field assistant coaches interfering with referees or with the ongoing match situation. Most pertinently, William Servat at the end of the Italy game against France when he interfered with a place kicker, and also the interaction between your old mucker Nigel, Neil Jenkins, who chose to question the referee's decision-making during the final game of the Six Nations. I'm just wondering, in the light of what has happened before with a World Cup winning coach, and obviously then the consequent death threats and retirement of a former colleague of yours, I'm just wondering, should the Six Nations and World Rugby look at introducing sanctions for those two men or their teams, and possibly introduce measures to prevent such occasions happening, i.e. maybe they're not allowed to be water carriers, etc. anymore?
So I think, David, how are you? Good to see you again. I think whether you're as a player or anybody involved on or off the field, or even as far as spectators go, really, you know, the value of respect in rugby is hugely important. That is something that we sort of pride ourselves on, particularly here in the URC, on those values. And when that line is crossed and it becomes unacceptable, then sanctions or the issues need to be dealt with. So I didn't see the William Servat incident. Obviously, I was working on the game on Saturday, and I hear the comments between Neil Jenkins and Mathieu Reynal. I thought Mathieu Reynal dealt with it very, very well on the field, and that was dealt with. Neil then needs to be reminded that, you know, if you are being on the field, when I was refereeing, if a water carrier came on or a coach came on, if he had something to say to me, I didn't have much issues. It was all to do with how it was said and what the context of what he was saying. I don't think you should be coming on and telling the referee they're doing this, they're doing that. That's not what you're on there for. But if you did come on and say something in the right context, then I wouldn't have too many issues with that. But when it becomes then you coming on and you're having a go at the referee, then that is not acceptable. And that needs to be dealt with. There is a quiet word, that it may be an official warning or letter, or there could be a sanction. It all depends on what you feel it is appropriate to deal with, whatever was said. So there is something I think we need to make sure that we stay on top of and deal with this. Because I know here in the URC, we will deal with these issues if they arise. And it's important we do that because we have to keep the value of ethos and respect in the game. We saw it happening in one of the URC games with Dan Bow and the referee. It was dealt with, and that's what I think, particularly in the URC and we do in rugby, is that when issues do arise, we deal with them, and we must deal with them, and we must keep that value of respect. And it's not a case of if you're coming on as a coach and you can't open your mouth and speak to the referee. I wouldn't want to be in a situation where we arrive at that. But what you say and how you say it, I think, is the key thing. And if that line is crossed, then yes, it needs to be dealt with. And I said, whether anything will come from it on the weekend, but I thought Matthew Renal dealt with it there and then, and I'm sure that the WIU on even Gas himself will have a word with Jinx and say, look, that's not what we want, and an apology maybe. Look, yeah, sorry, heat of the moment. Apology, and then we move on, and that's what I think is important.
Jaco?
Yeah, look, I don't think it's so much to be added. Nigel's nailed it. Values of the game. We got the respect. So the way in which it's asked, the timing of when it's asked, and I think the spirit of the game. We don't want everybody to be robots and nobody to have personality. But I think the spirit of the game is so important. That's something we have to treasure in this game, that distinguishes us from other games. And I've had some of the lighthearted moments in rugby when somebody carrying water said something funny, and it was appropriate at the right time. So we don't want to dumb that down, but we certainly want to protect the respect for the match officials and not open up, that environment to be a free for all. So if it happens, like Nigel say, we have to deal with it. And I think URC is really good with that, to deal with incidents. And then there's different degrees of dealing with it on merit. As long as we deal with it, I think we'll protect the ethos of rugby.
Dave, just add some context as well. In addition to Dan Baugh, there was one or two other clubs in the last 6 months who've received letters to distinctly remind them of their responsibilities to the water carriers, and the memo has gone out to the entire league before Christmas, highlighting what happened with Dan, and that we wouldn't want to see that trend continue. But we also report that stuff into different committees higher up the food chain with different competitions, and so if this starts becoming something that we see in a lot of competitions, I imagine World Rugby downwards will probably put a lot more attention on it. So, but yeah.
And just my second one, obviously, I'll leave Jaco for the moment because I'm speaking about it later. But I'm just wondering, Nigel, with we've seen a lot of former referees now working with clubs or unions. Just if you could maybe point out, from your perspective, the benefits of that possibly for the sport, for the teams, and for refereeing as a whole, because obviously Jaco's new boss has a bit of previous there in perhaps misunderstanding the thin line. So maybe your comments on that, Nigel. Thanks.
Yeah, look, I think anything that's going to benefit the spectacle and benefit the game, is something that we should all welcome as part of the game. It's a trend. It's been happening for quite a few years. I used to go in with Wales pretty much during their international campaigns, particularly the Six Nations, referee their contact sessions, help them understand what is a penalty, what isn't, try to get them more disciplined. Penalties are hugely important in a game, not just the ones that you kick for 3 points, but maybe the one that you silly give away in the opposition 22, and all of a sudden you're back in your own 22. So penalties are huge in the game, particularly if they're high. So it's something that benefits the game. Also, part of that role, you would be advising the management and the captain in particular, and the team of, you know, all different referees have a different way of dealing with situations, strong points or things maybe they're not so fussy on in the game. And then part of that would be helping them not to get away with things in the game or to cheat in the game, but to say, look, you know, with this referee, for example, as long as you're sort of on the offside line, he's happy enough as long as you're not in front of it. As long as you're on it, you could be quite tight, then he's happy with that. The referee you may get next week, or the different referee, he's much more strict. He wants you clearly behind it. So if you're not clearly behind, you may well get pinged. So just little things like that, and then you help the team prepare, and that would probably one of Jaco's roles. I think the relationship as well, which was probably highlighted over the last couple of years between coaches and World Rugby and referees, is hugely important. The feedback needs to be open and transparent. Yes, coaches need to abide by code of conduct, but also as referees, we have to hold our hand up and say, well, look, yeah, you know, that wasn't the performance that I usually give, or yeah, I got that wrong. And there has to be an open, transparent, and I think by having an expert in there, like Jaco's with South Africa now, and other referees as well, with Jerome says in France, that also helps that relationship as well, I think, between coaches and captains and referees as well, which I think will benefit the game as well. So I think it is, you know, it is an important part and is a step forward in rugby, I think, in getting those relationships, because, you know, you do get frustrated, you know, if the players will have made a mistake in the game, but if the referee makes a mistake in the last minutes, that's what everybody is talking about, whether we like it or not, and that will probably never change. So sometimes as a coach, you are going to get frustrated. As a player, you are going to get frustrated. So it's key then that, you know, we have this relationship. You know, I was just speaking to Rob Owley yesterday, who wanted me to look at a couple of things from the game on the weekend to have my view, to see if they're on the same page, because when they feed back to World Rugby, they don't want to send something back where I'm going, oh, look, Rob, the referee is right here, or look, this is a 50-50, you know, another referee may penalise it, another referee won't. So, you know, there's not much point in you really sort of sending this back. You just want to send back where you clearly want an answer, because it's not what you were expecting from that decision. So it is, I think it is an important role, and a role I'm sure that will benefit the team, will benefit refereeing as well, but also will benefit the game as a spectacle, I think.
Okay, thank you. Keep well.
Thanks, Dave. Over to Rob Cole, please.
Gents, I'm maybe being a bit of a pedant, but there's three things I wanted to clarify with you, and I've had this out with Nigel before. In 180 tests or whatever it is between you, have you ever refereed the line out properly? So you find the numbers, you get the gap, but you break the law which says the hooker must have his feet outside. Yes. Now you have a touch judge standing there saying, let's get the line out there. Why do you not get hookers? I mean, Elliot D stands in the field of play. It's a simple thing to do. That's the first one. Second one is kicks to the corner. Everybody knows that a 5-meter line out is the most important thing. Why do you turn your back on a player taking a penalty kick? You make the mark, you walk away. Dan Bigger takes 7 meters. Adam Hastings takes 8. If life is all about getting to the corner, so is it time for referees to carry, as in football, a spray? And as the law says, you must kick from behind the mark. And if you don't, you have to take it again. So can we maybe get spray guns for that? And can you then stop the most ridiculous thing of all, where referees try to make a mark for a scrum on an artificial pitch? You might be creatures of habit, I don't know, but it looks awful. Anyway, sorry, that's Mr. Pedant from Cardiff. How do you referee the line out properly?
You're on one this morning, Rob.
Oh, yeah. So is it important to uphold all the laws?
Look, I'll start off, Nigel. I think referees are often criticised for interfering too much with the game if we are technically too strict, you know, and there's got to be some rugby in between. But obviously our first job is to keep it safe and then to keep it fair. So is there a significant advantage gained. We have to judge, put all those in the factors that we factor before we blow the whistle. If media and fans will support a decision, 4 or 5 decisions of pulling up a line up and turning that into a scrum for feet and foot touching the inside of the field, then referees should do it. If it's good for the game, we should do it. But I don't think referees always have the backing of to be that technical and to interfere that much with the game, because we have to have the spectacle. We've spoken about the balance between spectacle and fairness. So it's a hard one, but if the game decides that's the way to go, then we need to back up the referee so they can do it. But
that's a terrible cop-out, Jaco. That's a terrible cop-out. You've got a touch judge there. He taps the bloke on the shoulder, says, keep your feet behind the line. And that, we've given him an inch. They're now taking a 1.5 feet.
I think that's what you see will happen, Rob. I think it's been highlighted now, and again, the power of social media, the good and bad of it, is things like this will be highlighted, and then it becomes a talking point. And then what will you see tends to happen then? We had it with me and Jaco reffing as well. Is there'll be a directive then. The referees will be told, look, this is getting, you need to get those players behind the line, and then that will be addressed. I do tend to agree with you. I think it's a little bit. It's not the most important thing on the referee's checklist, but I think it's a simple thing to get right. So yeah, I do. Funny enough, I was as I said, in Cardiff on Saturday up in the commentary BBC, looking down, and I could see Elliot clearly in, and I thought he should be behind the line. So yeah,
it
is something to put right, and I agree with you on the penalties. I actually did call a couple of us at half back to take it again because they were taking the piss. If it's a couple of meters, it shouldn't be a problem. But if you are taking 6, 7, 8 meters, then yeah. And what I think you will see, Rob, is you're highlighting it here now, and other people highlight it as well. And then there will be sort of a directive then to referees. Look, we need this bit of housekeeping. It's simple enough to do. Let's tidy it up, particularly for the assistant referees. So look, a little bit of common sense, I think, Rob, is if there's half a foot or 1 foot slightly going into the field of play, it shouldn't be a problem. But I do tend to agree with you. If it's like Elliot Daly in the weekend where he's clearly both feet are standing quite in, then yeah, I think that's something that can be addressed.
So we had a directive at the World Cup in the early stages where referees were told and players were told that they all had to be behind the kicker from kickoffs. Never happens. It happened and they were penalised in one game. But it's like the charge of the cavalry, and that 1 meter, 2 meters makes a huge difference to the receiving side. And that's something that either a touch judge or the TMO could start with. Now, I take Jaco's point that you don't want to be too pedantic, but if the laws are in the book, it's down to you two to apply them.
Well, not down to us two, but
no, not anymore, thank God.
Not anymore. But no, you're right, and I think players should be behind. Well, when Alan Roland was in charge of World Rugby, he had beat his bonnet about that. And we were all hammered every meeting, get him behind. And if you didn't, you'd be losing a mark from it. And then we made sure they were behind. So look, I think, as I say, if you're gonna have to sort of dissect it very, very technically, whether it's in front or not, who cares? But if it's clearly in front, then yeah, we need to deal, and I think me and Jaco will be on the same page as that. Look,
okay, what about the spray gun then for the penalties? Do you not think that's a simple thing to do?
When I was refereeing, I was carrying enough weight around me, let alone carrying a spray gun around with me.
Okay, I've had my moan for the day. I've got 4 women's games to watch at the Prince Valley Stadium now. Thanks, fellas.
Rob, we did do a quick trial with some spray stuff last year, so I'm going to ask what happened with that, and I'll write to you.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think it's a simple thing to do.
It is.
It stops people complaining.
I won't stop people complaining, but it'll get us closer.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Much appreciated.
Stephen Nell.
Thank you very much, guys. Jaco, you made us South Africans very proud through the years. Everything you achieved, and seeing your name always when it came to the big tests. I mean, working with the up and coming refs in South Africa now, do you see the next Jaco Peyper, so to speak, or the next Craig Joubert? I see Mornay is on a game this weekend. I think it's Zebra Leinster, but where do you think we are in terms of, or South Africa is in terms of producing somebody who could take charge of a World Cup semi-final or that kind of game?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen, for the kind comments. Yeah, do I see? I see enough talent. I see enough referees that can reach that level, but they need the exposure and they need the backing. And it takes time. You get young players that come through very quickly because they got the natural talent and they fit in with the team. And they come through faster. Referees need a bit more time in the cockpit because you're on your own. You need a bit of life experience. You need a bit of skills with, managing people. So it takes time. You've mentioned Mornay. So does Mornay have the talent? I think he does. He needs to now stand up and spend his time, pay his dues. And hopefully within the next 2-3 seasons, Mornay can produce at the highest level. However, to go from being an international or go into international refereeing, but to go from there into World Cup quarters and semis is another, I can't put 2 or 3 or 5 seasons to it, but it takes, again, time for you to learn the lessons and understand a few things. So refereeing experience means a lot. And it's not just experience in rugby, it's life experience. You need to be, put in front of various situations in life before you can actually deal with it under pressure. So that's always one of the biggest benefits. So it's going to take time, but South Africa definitely have enough referees, enough platforms. So you vastly up. Not many countries have a competition where you as a student can referee on television with a full stadium and a national audience or watching on SuperSport. So I think South Africa's got the platform, we've got the referees, we've got the teams. So definitely, I can see the next generation, but it won't happen overnight.
Nigel, are there any logistical issues that are preventing South African referees maybe from getting that more exposure that Jaco has been talking about? Obviously, it's in terms of appointments, it's probably an issue that South Africa's in a different hemisphere, or is it just a matter of South African referees now having to make their mark to be selected more?
I think it's the same as a team, as players. We're seeing it in Wales now when a generation of talented players come to an end, there's a rebuilding process. And when you look at the huge talent the South African referees have had over the years and will have in the future again, when that sort of comes to an end, then becomes a bit of rebuilding, and that takes time. We're very excited in the URC about a couple of the young South African referees coming through. Are they ready for those big matches yet? Probably quite not yet, but certainly I think, especially with the likes of Jaco and other people supporting there as well, within the coming seasons, we will see them back right at the top of the game. And the opportunities will be there for them. I think when you look at the sort of logistics of it, probably Adam can fill you in more here than me, but you have to look after referees' welfare, the constant traveling as well from one hemisphere to the other. So they certainly do come up here to referee. There's also opportunities to referee at home as well. I think as well, when we all look at the way that we do things these days regarding traveling, the effects on the environment, the carbon footprint, all these, I think, you need to take into account by managing the situation sensibly without sort of over-tiring or overusing referees and traveling back and forth all the time, but also as well in not denying them the opportunity to grow and have the experience of refereeing in the different hemispheres. Just getting that balancing act, I think, is important. So look, there's quite a few young, and part of my role as a selector in URC, I don't watch all the games on the weekend because it's, I coach referees here in Wales, so that takes up 3 or 4 games to watch. I'll try and watch as many URC games as I can, and also I'll watch the URC game with the referee that I'm reviewing. And look, there are some talented referees coming through in South Africa, but there needs a bit more time, particularly in the rebuilding of them to get your next Jaco Peypers, which probably won't happen this season, may not happen next season, but certainly it will be happening in a couple of seasons. And that's just the way life is, I guess, in all sports. When you just look at the great sides of your Man Uniteds and rugby as well as the All Blacks, South Africa and Wales, and refereeing is no different. It becomes a rebuilding process as well. And the important thing is that there are things in place to help the process of rebuilding in recruiting referees and giving them the opportunities then to reach their potential.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Jan de Koning.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jaco. Thank you, Nigel. Nigel, just to follow up on what you said earlier, taking away the safety net and too much technology coming in. We now see this move towards the 20-minute red card and the bunker system and everything. Is that creating more complexity to the game that makes it more complicated for the referees, given there's all these extras around?
Yeah, look, I think it does. I think what's important, I think, in rugby or in refereeing or in anything you do, whether in any walks of life, is that you don't sort of go halfway to try and fix something just to get something for the sake of getting, an answer to something you want to get the answer for. And what I mean by that is, what I think we need to look at, and this is a personal view, is we need to sit down and really look at exactly what is a red card. We have to look at if something is complete accidental or even careless, but there was no recklessness in it. It wasn't an act of thuggery. You weren't charging in with a head or shoulder, not caring where you hit somebody. If it was an act of we were sitting there and going, oh, that's unlucky, then we need to look at, well, why are we giving a red card for something that is unlucky and there was no recklessness in it? So we need to differentiate, I think, first of all, between exactly what warrants a clear red card. And for me, if you go flying into a ruck with your shoulder first, your arms behind you, straight into the head of a player, which is a complete act of recklessness and dangerous, then for me, you should be sent off, but then you shouldn't be replaced in 20 minutes. So they need to look at exactly how this all works. And that's where I think at the moment we're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place at the moment of trying to paper over. We don't want to spoil the game. Somebody sent off unluckily for 60 minutes, they're down to 40 men. Well, my question would be, well, if somebody's very, very unlucky, then why is he given a red card? So we need to look at exactly what constitutes a red card, I think. We also have to remember player safety is hugely, hugely paramount. And particularly here in the URC, as well as any other competition in World Rugby and any other one as well. And we have to sort of change player behaviour. We have to get them out of that sort of recklessness, flying in, not caring where they're hitting people. We have to change that. What is evident is, are we actually changing that player behaviour? And then I'm a little bit I can understand the need for the 20 minutes when somebody is unlucky, but as I said, that's something that needs to be addressed, whether it should be a red card or not, or should it be a different sanction for a different red card? Who knows? But I'm a little bit sort of worried that if you're just going to lose, you're just going to be down to 14 men for 20 minutes, are we then taking away what we really need to be strong on, and that is changing player behaviour and making the game as safe as we possibly can? If you look back at the tip tackle many years ago, or contact in the air, referees went really, really strong. They were really strong, players were sent off. We very rarely see a tip tackle anymore. Very, very rare we see them. And very, very rare do we see now the recklessness of taking a player out in the air. Yes, it happens sometimes, but not as it was before, because referees went strong, there was a ban for it, and it changed player behaviour. But for some reason, we are still struggling with getting the change of player behaviour when it comes to recklessness around clear outs and around head contact, in getting those tackles lower. You see some players, some teams are consciously trying to do that. Sometimes others are not. And this is where it's important, people like Jaco, Jerome Gassels in France, the roles that they will have in the Springboks camp in making sure, one, player safety, and also for the benefit of the team as well. We do not want to go down to 14 to 30 men for any period of time in the game. So let's make sure we get the discipline right. Let's work hard and let's get these tackles lower. And that's when the benefit of having a referee in then as well in changing that player behaviour. So I'm not emotionally attached for or against the 20 minutes red card, but I just think at the moment it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction in trying to find a balance in keeping people happy when people are going, oh, I've spoiled the game, they're down to 14 men, compared to a clear red card, which is there for a reason. So, you know, I think there needs to be a little more time spent about this, and let's look at the whole picture and make sure we get it right, rather than just something papering over the cracks and we don't see a change in player behaviour, particularly when it comes to head contact, you know, which player safety is paramount.
Thanks, Nigel. I really appreciate it. Adam, just checking, are we at the stage yet where we can ask Jaco about life after refereeing?
There's a few more questions to come, and then we'll make sure we get Jaco for 1 or 2 questions on that. So don't worry, Jan.
Okay, I'll keep mine for Jaco for that then.
Perfect, thank you. Caelan Scully is next.
Morning, gents. Jaco, I might just start with yourself. You were involved in the last World Cup where we brought in the TMO bunker. From a referee's point of view, were you happy with how that went and moving into this year's Six Nations? And do you think we're far away from seeing it in maybe URC finals, Champions Cups finals, or things like that?
Yeah, Caelan, from a referee point of view, it took a lot of pressure off us, being on the field, and you could refer that to the bunker, and then you can continue with the game for the next 60 minutes or 70 minutes, whatever it is, maybe 40 minutes. And the decision sits outside that stadium. That team of 4 just continues with the balance of the game, and you deal with what's in front of you. Naturally, when a referee makes a big decision, and we can claim that we don't, but I mean, we're human beings, so often, in some way, there's a bit of a compensation after a big decision, whether it's, you know, you react in a certain way because you're a human being. So a lot of times coaches have told us that once the team is given a referee's given a red card, that they kind of referees the rest of the game slightly different. I think the bunkers protected that environment where the referees can continue, the decision sits outside, and they continue with the game. It's made it easier for referees. It also affords the referee or the TMO in the bunker and his assistant more time to work through it. You've got 9 minutes. You don't have the pressure of 80,000 people on your back. The screen's not there at the top of a stadium roof, so they can work through it properly, discuss it, and then come back with a decision. So I know from a referee point of view, we felt it worked. We felt it took a lot of pressure of us to deal with the rest of the game, the full 80 minutes at hand. There is a bit of data being collated at the moment around it, and Nigel's referred, he's made really good points around the red card, the 20-minute red card. Are we changing by player behaviour, all those sort of things. So all those feedback and data is being put in the pot at the shape of the game. There's various committees that is doing a bit of further research on it to see whether this is what the fans want. Is this what's going to bring people to the game? But certainly from a referee perspective, we really enjoyed the bunker at the World Cup.
That's good. And just for yourself, Nigel, I listened to an interview with an Irish referee recently who spoke about the connection with his touch judges or TMO. You would have had the likes of Derek Bevan do TMO in a lot of your games. How important is it for a referee to have that relationship with his touch judges or TMOs, especially in big games?
Yeah, look, it's hugely important because you have to, first of all, you need the team of 4 working together to have that trust, knowing how everybody works, knowing what the referee wants as well from them. The way that the referee interprets different things as well, because what may be a penalty for the assistant referee or what may be a yellow card for the assistant referee may not be necessary for the referee. So you need that sort of working relationship of trust and understanding each other as well. You tend to find that during World Cup tournaments where people work together for a period of time, that team of 4 in particular tends to work much better because they are working together quite often. They know the ins and outs of each other. It's also important as well that you have the ability and capability on the field with you as well, being able to make those big decisions. And obviously neutrality plays a hugely important part in appointments and stuff as well. So yeah, look, the team of four, you can't referee an international match or any professional match on your own anymore. You can't. You need a good team around you, particularly two assistant referees and the TMO as well. So yeah, it is important. I think very, very important.
Perhaps if I can just fill on what Nigel said. We found that the more you work with the same TMO, the more you work with the same assistant referees, obviously the better you know each other, the better you play off each other. And I think there's some similarity in teams. You don't pick a different 9 and 10 every week. You don't pick a different 8, 9, 10 combination every week. You try and create that consistency because you start feeling each other. You start back, you understand the other person in official better, and you know what he needs. So it's usually important. I think that's one of the things that URC is doing well. They try to pair up a referee and a TMO for as many many matches as they can, and also working with the same assistant referees. If a referee tours to South Africa for 2 weeks, you would get the same assistant referees both week as far as possible. So at least there's some relationship developing. But that is definitely there's a cost factor. So there's a budget implication. So how far can you stretch that? But that's definitely one of the things that the referees are fed back to all the management. World Rugby, URC is, we believe we're in a better position where we work often together and we'll give you better performances.
Thanks, Caelan. Over to Mike Pierce, followed by Simon and then Derek.
Good morning, Adam. Good morning, Nigel. Good morning, Jaco. I'd like to ask each of you if you could make one law change, had the power to do that, to improve the game or to improve the referee's ability to referee the game, what would that be?
The one for me, I certainly look at substitutions, the way they're used and how many you can have. Basically, if the two teams put on all the subs, you've got 60 new players on the field in the last 20 minutes playing against 14 players who've been on for 60 minutes. I think that will help the safety of the game because it will, if players are conditioned to play just 40, 50 minutes, then they're able to carry much more weight. The collisions are much bigger. The way the game is played is different. So it reduces the impact on the collisions, I think. Also as well, I think it'll help open up the game as well, particularly the second half, where the game becomes nothing worse as a referee. Is a great game of rugby going on, and then you have to stop, sub on, another stoppage, sub on. So that is certainly one that I would look at. But the one for me that I would like to change pretty much now is the goal line dropout. I don't think that has worked. It has probably given the advantage to the defence, and rugby has always been the benefited out to the attack. It was bought in for two main reasons. It was bought in to try and sort of get away from the constant kicks to the touchline for a 5-metre line out, which made teams then maul over, which is pretty much impossible to defend. And then when they were held up, it would be a goal line dropout. So that then hopefully was going to encourage teams, okay, they're not going to kick to the corner so much to set up a maul. They'll, off the top of the line out, they'll spread it wide. I don't think that has happened. Pretty much every line out that goes to the corner is going to be a maul set up still. So that hasn't done that. The other reason was, from an attractive point of view, but also safety point of view, was that to try and reduce the amount of pick and goes when you're sort of within sort of 3, 4, 5 meters of the try line. So instead of people pick and going and just constant contact and impact, physically barging yourself over, it reduces those contacts, it reduces those impacts, help improve player safety because you've got less impact. I'm not seeing that. They're certainly not seeing a visible change in that. I'm still seeing, when people get within a couple of meters of the try line, I'm still seeing pick and goes when there's plenty of numbers out on the wide. It hasn't, I don't think it's done that. So the two main reasons it's brought it in was, I don't think it's worked. I also I think, if you make a brilliant, we saw it in the Wales game on the weekend where the Italian defender literally picked the Welsh ball carrier, tackled up, pulled him over the line, trying to keep him on top of himself in order to get a goal line dropout. That is a negative deploying in the game. So for me, that is one law. I just don't see any benefit of it. I think it's taken away from the game. Now, one thing we don't want is endless scrum after scrum, scrum after scrum, scrum after scrum. But what we must never lose from the game is the ability to have a scrummage, which is a hugely important part of the game. Remember that rugby is a game for all shapes and sizes. And if you lose the scrum as an integral part of the game, not the most important part of the game, but an integral part of the game, then you're going to lose a huge amount of players who have no place to play in the game. So sometimes we need to reward a side who's been positive and attacking, and reward them with a scrum 5 in order they can continue that attack. So for me, that for many different reasons, I think the goal line dropout to me hasn't brought anything positive.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed what he was doing to do it, and I would change it tomorrow if I could, but I can't do that.
Yeah, I'd say if we can make a new law that tells the halfbacks they've got to keep their mouths shut, I think that would be a great law. But then at the risk, I played halfback myself, so no, that's just being a bit facetious. The first thing, one that springs to mind for me is the touch law. I think it's too complicated when you catch the ball and you land inside, and sometimes you jump and the ball's crossed the plane of touch, and then if you slap it back, it's all about where you land. Why don't we just make it consistent? It's always the same. It's hard to make those judgments on the run whether the ball's crossed the plane of touch and there's a player trying to juggle the ball. So I think we can make it simpler, the touch law. And then another one, off the top of my mind, that steals a lot of space. We always design laws to create space and tempo in the game. This in front of kick, that you can remain in front of kick outside 10 meters. I know Super Rugby is already trialing it, and we need to see a bit more data of what the unintended consequences. But I think that can create a lot of space for your fast back three to run it back and create some opportunities and some spectacle for us. So I think that's probably the next one I'll change.
Just one of the quick. Sorry,
that's something in URC that we've been very strong on this year with referees, in making sure that we are strong in getting that space, awareness of people who are chasing, obviously refereeing within the law, but also being very, very strong on those maul setups, make sure they're legal, and also as well in front of kick, in enabling to allow that extra space. In what Jaco said there is a really important point, really, and I hope that is a law, as long as there's no unintended consequences, that they will look at changing, which I think will benefit the game of space as well, I think, and hopefully will reduce amount sometimes of the aimless kicking in the game as well.
Yeah. Just one other quick point, if I may. Jaco talking about chopsy halfbacks. Do you think there's a possibility of the ref being mic'd up to the stadium speaker system, so when he makes a decision, he can that can be heard by the spectators? Because I know we've got RefLink, but to be honest, all you can hear is the gobby halfbacks. You can't hear the ref all that well. So is this something that might be considered sort of NFL
Mike,
style?
I can take that. We've already done a couple of trials in South Africa last season, and I think we did a trial at Ospreys as well. So
Okay.
we would be keen as a league to see that become the standard. But as you can imagine, we've got 16 to 18 different venues. And the real trick is trying to make sure you don't get reverb between actually the stadium and the broadcast and stuff like that.
Sure.
So when we can figure out a magic technical solution, it should become more commonplace, but it's certainly something we feel would benefit people in the stands, definitely.
Okay, thank you very much. Jaco, Nigel.
Thanks, Mike. Sorry, Simon Rico next.
I see Nigel just left us for a moment, but Jaco, nice to speak to you. Eventually I got you in a corner and we can talk. We were trying to get hold of you sometime or another, but congrats. First of all, you guys, you're speaking about changing of laws. There's one law that I would like to see changed, and I'd like to get your opinion on this. The maul and the way that some teams only can score, basically, tries by having the law or having the maul as part of the armor. And when is that going to change towards the fact that let's make the ball or the ball carrier the place of where the offside line starts and continue playing from that level onwards. Is there some development on that, or are we stuck in that rut?
I can give you some feedback. So if you read the maul law, the ball on formation, the ball's actually the offside line. So the first player that hits in only needs to hit behind the ball. So you would have seen some international players who kind of stand off and then they hit from the side. It looks like from the side if that was a maul, but he's allowed to hit high up until the point of the ball. But then the maul is from there on we have offside lines where you have to join in your hindmost player or behind, or the normal maul law. So if you use the law right, you can actually, the first man in can do that. The maul is a really good phase of the game in rugby if you see it for the right reasons. There's no, just like a scrum, you can have 16 people in there and tie up a lot of people in that space, in the small space, and you have a lot of free space for the backs. So if it's used properly and set up legally on the first setup, then I think the maul is a really good thing. It also creates, again, Nigel referred to, a game for all shapes and sizes, because you need different sort of body shapes in the maul to make it effective. And to defend mauls also drain energy, so that opens up space in the last 20 minutes again. However, if we allow the attack too much and it becomes too hard to stop, then it becomes, like you said, a weapon that teams will continuously use and not just variants. But the maul's a good thing if it's refereed properly.
Nigel, you spoke about the tip tackle. I just want to go back to that in a moment or two. You addressed that. And I suppose that there's obviously stats about that proportionally to the red card tackles, and obviously the different committees are working with that. I suppose also that proportionally to how many up and unders or kicks, high kicks there are, and potentially red cards could emulate from high tackles or tip tackles, that is less in any other game than the carries proportionally to in a game. So you would have less kicks, obviously statistically, in a game than you would have carries. Isn't that one of the gray areas again, where you will have to have a referee to interpret, and you will have to have from a spectator's point of view a requirement that you either apply black or white rule applications?
Sorry, so what was you're asking about the kicks in the game?
Yeah. If you compare the amount of kicks in a game,
yeah,
which might lead to tip tackle on the one hand, that would be proportionally less than that you would have carries that could result into your head-on collisions. If you have those two factors, again, aren't you have less red cards? Yes, because if I understand you correctly, the referees are applying the law more often as a black and white part of the law book. Am I reading you correct?
No. What I'm saying is, when it was an example of if you go back, I would say probably a good 5-6 seasons ago now, maybe, or a little bit more, you had a lot of collisions and contacts in the air. So players were just being reckless, and then it would cause players to land dangerously. And also as well, you had a lot of tip tackles where players were lifting a player up and turning him and driving him to the ground. So the referees were really strong in reffing that and sending players off if there was a reckless and a high degree of danger in the way that they fell, or if there was a tip tackle and you didn't do your best to bring the player back down safely. And then because of the referees were sending players off for that, and then they were subsequently banned for whatever period it was, it changed the player behavior. So we don't see many of that anymore. So I don't think that's got anything to do with the amounts of kicks. There are probably more kicks now than there ever been, but what we are seeing is players change their player behavior and consciously making the effort if they are going to compete for the ball in the air, that they're only going to compete when they know they've got a good chance of getting it, or they're going to pull out of it and just let the player catch the ball, land, and then tackle it. They're not going to run the risk of being reckless and causing a dangerous situation sent off for. And the same tackle. You're not seeing players now bringing the player up in the air and then just dropping him, not caring where he lands. You're not seeing that anymore because they know what the consequences are from a personal point of view, being sent off, but also from a player safety point of view. And my point was that for some reason, we are still having a lot of reckless clear-outs and a lot of upright tackles causing head-on-head collisions, landing up in the bunker or landing up in red cards. And even though these players are being banned for this, we are not seeing a change in behaviour. We are seeing it slightly. We are seeing now the Six Nations this year was pretty good as far as that went. Where last year was slightly different, but we're still seeing a lot of this going on. So we need to look at how we are going to change the player behaviour in actually getting them to consciously make an effort to tackle lower, and also not going charging in to clear out pile-ups or rucks, dangerously, and then causing head-head collisions. So that was my point on that. For some reason, we are still seeing players running that risk, which is causing still a lot of head collisions, and we somehow need to do something around that. And my point was, I'm not sure if the 20-minute red card is going to help in getting that change of player behaviour. And obviously, with time will tell, I guess, on that. Thanks for clarifying that.
Sorry, Simon, I'm conscious we've had the guys for an hour now, and I just want to allow Derek to get his question in, just so that we can then switch to Jaco to get one or two just about his new role. We can finish up. Right, so apologies for interrupting, but we have had the guys for quite a long time. Derek, over to you.
55 minutes. Nigel, I want to talk about an incident, but I don't want to talk about the actual incident. I want to talk about the rule. It's a penalty try rule. So when Wales are playing Ireland, Wales get a penalty try. Tyburn commits a foul at the side of the ruck, which has nothing to do with whether or not Wales are going to score. It is a foul. It is a penalty. Now, if, for instance, a halfback standing away from the ruck had sworn at the referee or sworn at somebody else, it would have been a penalty. But it wouldn't be a penalty try because it doesn't affect the ability to score a try. Now, I don't know if you know the incident I'm talking about. It's the Wales penalty try, and it's given for a foul by Tyburn, a penalty offence, but it doesn't affect whether the try was going to be scored or not. So they get across the line and they're held up. My question is, could you just explain that rule to me? Not necessarily whether it's right or wrong. Is any penalty at all give a penalty try, or does the penalty involved have to stop the try being scored?
Right. Okay, Derek, as a proud Irishman, you obviously don't think it's a penalty try. And as a proud Welshman, it was. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Look, no, yeah, okay. No, this is a very good one to talk about, actually. So the penalty try is, if it wasn't for the actions of that player, would a try probably have been scored? So it doesn't have to be maybe scored, possibly scored, definitely scored. It's a probability. So do you as a referee think that if it wasn't for the illegal actions of that player, Tyburn in this situation, do you think Wales would have probably scored the try? And if you think they probably would have, then you award the penalty try. If you then think, even though Tybur's actions were illegal, it was a penalty, it probably was a yellow card, but I still don't think Wales would have scored because there were other Irish players there to defend it, then it wouldn't be a penalty try. So what you do is this. Tyburn now can no longer take a part in that discussion. Once he's committed that foul, he's out of the equation. So you can't say, well, he did come from the side, but if he hadn't come from the side, he could have gone back and prevented the ball being grounded, so therefore I'm not giving a penalty try. Once Tyburn has committed that offence, he now is out of the discussion. You don't count him as the next part of the discussion. What you do count is, were the other Irish players who were there legally, could they have prevented that try being scored? And if you think they probably would have, which means Wales would probably not have scored, then it's not a penalty try. And look, I'm not going to hang a referee out to dry here. They thought it was a probable try because they thought he was going to score. And that's their interpretation. Myself, as a Welshman, I don't think Wales would have scored because there was enough Irish defenders there. So it all comes down to your interpretation. Do you think Wales would have probably scored? Yes, I do. Penalty try. Do you think Wales would have probably scored? No, I don't, because there were still other Irish defenders there who would have prevented the try. Then it's not a penalty try, but it still would be a penalty and still would be a yellow card against Hardburn because of his illegal actions. So I hope that helps you understand, Derek.
This isn't a question. I just want to say the penalty try. Yeah, we're all Drovers fans now. I see your video with the cows and stuff. Have you refereed at Tygburns Club, Clandovery? Everybody in Ireland's a Clandovery fan now.
I haven't refereed at his club. No, I haven't. I have spoken at, whose club did I speak then? At Furlong, was it? I've spoken at his club.
No, Tygburn, Clandovery in Wales.
No. Oh, in Wales. Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes. Oh, yes. I mean, I see what you mean.
Every Irish man is a Clandovery fan now.
Yeah, I am. Yes, I refereed Clandovery many times. Great, not far from me actually. My father-in-law is a big Clandovery fan as well. So no, I refereed in Clandovery many times. Great club. They're actually top of the Welsh Premiership at the moment, and they're in the final of the Premiership as well. And if they play well, they probably, or maybe should win that. Yeah, great club.
Say to your father that every Irishman is a Clandovery fan now. Up the Drovers.
Derek, I'm very glad that you appreciate that the success of the Irish team at the moment was established here in Wales. And I also am sure that you're aware that St. Patrick was born in Banwen, a small village in Wales as well.
Welsh.
So you Irish can be very grateful to us Welsh, okay? Don't forget that.
Yeah, don't forget, we have the 50, he died in 451 AD. We've had a 1,500-year wake.
Yes.
Look,
cheers, Derek.
Thank you, Derek. Very good. Guys, I just thank you firstly to Jaco and Nigel. I have definitely overextended their courtesy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm sorry I'm jumping in. I've got to go because they wait to do whistle watch, so I've got to go.
Brilliant, Nigel. Thank you so much for your time.
All the best, everybody.
Yes, thank you, Nigel.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Guys, we can hang on for just a minute or two more, just for some of you who had some questions to ask Jaco about his new role. But we will just keep it to maybe 2, maybe 3 questions max. Is that all right, Jaco? Cool. Okay. So I know Jan de Koning, you had asked earlier on, so I'll let you go first.
Thanks. Dankie, Jaco. Je lijkt 10 jaar jonger. Lijkt me die stress is weg. Sorry, that was just a joke.
Weekends are a bit more relaxed. Yes, Jan.
Yeah. If we can start, I know you're probably going to get a lot of this, but has your life changed? And what is your? I know your role has been described at Sorry and thing, but what for you is the main focus that you think needs the most urgent attention in South African rugby in terms of referees?
So first of all, how's life changed? This past week, I've been home for both my daughter's birthday for the first time in 6 years. So life has changed. I had a birthday party with 16, 11-year-olds Saturday to entertain instead of 15 rugby players or 30 rugby players on the pitch. So life has changed significantly, but their birthday's always in the last week of Six Nations, and obviously we're always involved there. So yeah. What does referees need? They need opportunities, and they need backing. On the way to the top or on your way through, you make mistakes. So I think they need the backing that people will, or management and SA Rugby will back them through those mistakes and get them through to the other side. I remember the days when I refereed with Craig Joubert and Jonathan Kaplan and those guys. We also shared the load. It's easier when there's. I'm trying to say to the guys, and I'm not officially involved yet, but I keep saying to the guys that refereeing, although you think it's an individual sport, it's a team sport, because if you've got 4 or 5 guys at the top that can share the load, that helps longevity, that helps your development, that helps having someone to bounce and just soundboard or for their performances. So I think we need to determine who are the referees we want to back for the next few years, and then we can't just throw them away after one mistake or one bad game. We've got to back those referees, the boys and the girls, whoever we pick, and we got to invest in them time, share lessons that we've learned. Because I think, like I've referred previously in this interview, I've spoken about experience, and I think referees can. We've always said in our room that you can get free experience. You don't have to learn from your own mistakes. You can also learn from the other referees' mistakes. So it's going to take a bit of work, but a clearly defined group, and I'll take guidance from SA Rugby there, and I'll play my role. That needs to clearly be defined, but along with Marius Jonker, I think we'll have an input on the next 2 or 3 guys that will be on the radar for World Rugby and URC.
Right, okay.
Thanks, Jan. Okay, guys, I'll just open it up to whoever is remaining who wants to ask Jaco about his new role.
May I please ask Adam?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Jaco, Simon weer hier. Jaco, I want to touch on where you left off with answering the question on referee development. Yes, all good and well there at the top, where you guys perform and where it is more in the public eye. There's obviously a role to be played also in South Africa for ref development at some of the lowest levels. Schools rugby, for instance, I'm using that as an example. The schools rugby season is starting in all earnest now, and people don't want to become refs. It's a straightforward answer that if we do the commentary and you ask the potential assistant refs there, why don't you want to become a ref? They say, no, I'm not interested. And because of the not interested, not only because of the flack and the negativity, it is some of the answers that you get back is we do not get enough exposure and we do not get enough training. We're not cared for. We're not looked after. Is that your recollection as well? And is there something to be done about that via SA Rugby?
To be honest, that's not within my consultancy. I've obviously got a dual role with the Springboks and then working with it. Whoever they select as the top end guys going through in the future. So at that level, I can make contributions if they draw me in and work with those guys. I'll gladly work with them and share some knowledge and presentations, etc., and skills. However, I think you've touched on it. We need to tell the good stories about refereeing to lure guys to refereeing. So many of the stories being told are the ones of referees being harassed, online, those sort of things. But my personal experiences, like in any good job, that 90% of it's great. So we need to advocate that refereeing is a top job. It's a great job. You want the job because you travel the world, you see the best places in the world, you spend time in the Bondi beaches and the Queenstowns of New Zealand, or in Paris, or in you go to cities like London, Dublin, you name it. Edinburgh, you referee in a closed roof stadium. So if we tell the good stories of refereeing as it is, and it's 90% of the stories, then I think it'll look more attractive. That's the start for me. I think there's so many negative things and stories about. We focus on all of those, and all jobs that's worthwhile and have this sort of exposure, have those 10% bad times at least. So I'd love to change, and I've tried to do it since I've announced my retirement, that I'm telling everywhere I go, I'm telling people how good a job it is and how many privileges you get. So I think if we start and change that perception, that's the first place where we're going to get people to now engage with the game and say, oh, there's something to work with. And then yes, we can. I'll play my role if I'm being nominated to be at that level. And then we can look at the structure. I don't have privilege to actually understand those structures yet. But one day maybe they may involve me and I can play a role. So unfortunately, to give you an answer, my brief is just at the top end for now. For now, the brief is at the top end with the top 2-3 referees. And
this last question, will we ever see a ref at a post-match interview?
I've thought about this many times. I've thought about the pros and the cons. I think there's definitely benefits that the referee can. You're at the risk of justifying a decision, but you can always explain what you've seen, just like the teams. But also, it comes with different risks. Exposures that might be negatively geared. So we did an experiment. This must have been, I think, about 2009, 2008. Could have been earlier. And Paul Dobson, bless him, what a good refereeing man. He actually sat with me and Billy Roos in after the Currie Cup match in those interviews. So we trialed it for 3 or 4 matches, and I don't know why it was abandoned. But yes, I think there can be many good spin-offs, but then there needs to be a level of training. So coaches and captains are trained to go into that environment, protect themselves. So if we do decide to do that, then referees also need that training, not just the rugby training and on-field training. They need that sort of training to not step into the traps and create more headlines or controversies. There's definitely benefits, but there's also negative aspects that could flow from it. I think in the new world, people want transparency, so we should work it out.
I appreciate you, Jaco. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate this.
No worries, thank you. Time for one more question, I think.
One more?
One more, yeah. If there's anyone wasn't asked.
Jaco, this just adds to something Nigel said earlier, about, maybe a little bit too much technology and, perhaps it should be reduced. How important do you think it is now in training referees to emphasize make a decision, and advocate a reluctance rather of going to the TMO? Or do you think just that chance of going to the TMO, even if it creates a little bit of, takes away from the spectacle, just the fact that there's the chance that, you will get it 100% correct, does that trump, does that really swing it towards the TMO?
It's Stephen asking, isn't it? So you nailed it. So my first Super Rugby game, that was 2007 or 8. There was 9 cameras at the game, and the opening game of World Cup had more than 35 cameras. So just to give you an idea, over time, over 10, 12 years, how the development of the exposure and different camera angles available to show the referee wrong or right, how that has changed over time. So just to give you a perspective. But you will always see the referees that is in good form and referees that get good ratings after games from, inside our system or from teams or from the spectators are the ones that take charge of the game and the ones that make decisions, and only use the TMO to, at times, like Nigel said, when it's a massive game decision or there's clearly no conclusive evidence on the field. But you can't second guess yourself with the TMO all the time. Referees need experience, and that helps, but you need confidence. So if you have those two in the bag, then there's no reason why you can't be confident to trust yourself and make those decisions. That contributes to the flow, that contributes to the spectacle, and that contributes to the game hugely. So you're right. Referees should be coached to, in the first instance, make a decision as if there is no television match official, and then only use that when it's a hell of a decision and there's no conclusive evidence. It has happened that in a game, it happens once, and I've seen games where it's still a hell of a game, and the referee's gone to the TMO 5 times, so it didn't affect the spectacle at all, because everyone knows that it simply had to be checked. You just can't establish whether that foot in real time has touched the line or not, whether the ball's touched the line or not. So, that doesn't break down the spectacle, but you can't just reverse stuff up, abdicate and reverse stuff up and break down the spectacle. Confidence and experience.